Hello, Yorick here, and today I'm going to talk to you about changing the Plex plugin in FreeNAS. This is all documented online. You don't need a video to do it. On the other hand, some folk just have a hard time with following the instructions because it is legitimately the first time they've been on command line. So let me first lay out as to what we're doing and why. So FreeNAS has a Plex plugin. Streams your video, all that good stuff. I'm assuming you know what that is. And there can be a few issues. One is you might want the Plex plugin on a newer version than what comes with FreeNAS. And FreeNAS updates this like every 3 months, if that. So that's one reason. The other reason might be you just upgraded your your FreeNAS. So you upgraded your FreeNAS and now you're on, say, 11.3 and you have new IO cage jails. And there's your warden jail, and now what? How do I get over, right? How do I move everything over as if nothing ever happened? Third reason might be you just like tinkering and you just want to use that hardware transcode, and we'll get to that in a bit, on Plex, on FreeNAS, so that your 4K movies can get to mobile on the fly, rather than doing that in the background and prepping those movies, which is, by the way, also a really good idea. So, how do you do this, right? Established you want to do that. What do you do? What you want to do is don't use a plugin. You're going to create a jail. And we're going to use Dan B35's wonderful script to make that easy. We're going to create a dataset for the Plex metadata. That's the data that tells you, or rather tells Plex, what is this movie? You know, what's the name? What's going on with it? Has the user put extra descriptions in? All that kind of stuff is in the metadata. So we want to keep that from the old plugin. We're going to link that data set in, and we're going to copy all the old metadata over. And then for, reasons, I'm going to show you how to enable hardware transcode. Okay, that is explained here. Don't use a plugin, create a dataset, create a Plex jail, stop the media server, move everything over. So let's get going. We're going to use Dan B's script here. It's on GitHub and it is well documented as what you need to do. It basically says change to a convenient directory, download this script, create a Plex config file, and get going. This is fairly simple to follow for anyone who is familiar with command line. This video is there for those who are not. All right, first things first. So on my FreeNAS, I have set up a Plex jail, and this was created as a plugin. So very often when you have an existing plugin jail, it'll be named Plex. Now, Dan's script also calls the jail Plex. So this is going to cause a bit of an issue for us. We can't have the name twice, so we'll have to rename this first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to stop this thing and rename it. So we can just stop it from the UI. And now we're going to rename this thing. For this, you will download an SSH client. I recommend PuTTY. I'll put a link into the description. And let's go grab PuTTY and get to the actual FreeNAS host here. Okay. And I can see with IO cage list, I can see my installed jails. I'm going to rename Plex. So I'm going to say IO cage rename Plex. I'm going to just call it Plex old. Okay, done. And I'm going to start it again just for reasons. I don't have to do this, but I can because I'm actually having it make a media directory in the background right now. Okay, well, I'm going to keep this PuTTY window here because we will need this again. Speaking of taking things for granted, my FreeNAS has a service called SSH enabled. This allows me to connect to its shell. That is not on by default. So you'll want to go in here, set SSH to running. You can set it to start automatically. You don't have to, but you'll need it for this work. While there is a shell in FreeNAS here, this UI shell is not long-lived enough and stable enough for us to use it here. It also is a little awkward with copy-paste, so we will be using PuTTY instead. Okay, so now that I have my old jail renamed to Plex old, I am going to set things up for Danby's script. So the first thing I see here is he talks to me about the Plex config path. The path to store your Plex metadata defaults to pool path Plex data. So I'll set my pool path and he defaults to Plex underscore data. I actually want this as a separate data set. That will allow me to snapshot it. Makes life so much easier. I don't like this as just a directory under the main pool, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself that data set. I'm going to keep this default name of Plex underscore data, but you could call it something else, and then you just have to set the Plex config path in the script, and we'll get to that. So let's go to storage pools. You will see here this Plex metadata. This is what I actually really use. We're not going to use this here. This is going to be an example of how to do this, not my specific setup. So I'm going to create myself a new pool. Sorry, nope, I'm not. So I am going to create myself a new data set. Just got to figure out where I do that. Right here, add data set to my main pool, and we're going to call this Plex underscore data to match what Dan does in his script. Everything else can be as per default. Case sensitivity is fine. Share type generic is fine. We definitely do not want this to be a Windows share, right? This needs to be Linux type, or Unix type, or whatever we're gonna call it. Otherwise, we're gonna have an issue. All right, let's go create our Plex data. So Plex data now exists under Mount Gion, which is my pool Plex data, which is the default location that his script looks for. Okay, so now I have my Plex underscore data directory or data store that I'm going to use for metadata, and I'm going to follow Dan's instructions on GitHub, and this link will also be in the description. So the first thing he says is change to a convenient directory on your FreeNAS server. We're going to run this directly on FreeNAS in our SSH and download this script using this command. All right, I don't need to understand Git. You can if you like, but you don't have to. You just have to copy paste this. So here we are where we were previously. And this root directory I'm in is actually convenient enough. So I'm just going to go git clone. There we go. Right? I have now cloned the FreeNAS IOKH Plex directory from Danby's GitHub. So we're going to do just cd into that, cd FreeNAS IOKH Plex. Okay. And take a look. There it is. I have my Plex jail sh script, the README, all that stuff is here. Perfect. So now what do I need? Create a configuration file called Plex config using your preferred text editor. All right, so we're going to do that right in here. And for ease of use, I'm going to use EE instead of the editor of the righteous VI. Okay, here we are, empty file. And what do I have to have in here? A jail IP, a default gateway IP, and my pool path. So again, copy paste. The jail IP will be the IP address of Plex on my network. So here's one I prepared earlier. Now I'm on the .3 network. Here's my gateway. So you need to know this, right? You need to know what's a free IP address. I chose one that is not in my DHCP range, so DHCP doesn't step on it. Otherwise, you might have some issues with not being able to get to Plex. That's my default gateway. And then my pool path, well, it's not Mount Tank. its mount MNT Gion. All right, there we go, perfect. And I'm gonna go escape, leave enter, save changes. There we are. So we got Plex config saved, and let's just make sure it has the information I expect. Cat Plex config. There it is, jail IP, default gateway, pool path. There are optional configuration values which I'm not setting. Use Plex path. This I want to talk about briefly. So he says if you set this to 1, the script will download and install the Plex path version of Plex Media Server. Right, this doesn't mean, oh, I want to use Plex path with Plex Media Server, so I better set this to 1. No, you can install the regular version, the regular stable version of Plex Media Server, enable Plex path, and get all the features of Plex path with it. No problem at all. What this does is it installs a beta version of Plex Media Server. So one of the features of Plex path is the access to beta code. So what this really does is if you set use Plex path to 1, it will grab the Plex Media Server -Plex path package from FreeBSD, and that package is beta code. If you leave this at 0, it'll be the Plex Media Server package, which is the stable code. I prefer stable, so I'm going to use that. Again, you can still use all the Plex path features with stable code. Of course you can, right? Plex config path, this is the path to store my Plex metadata in. Now, if you set a dataset that is not called pool path Plex data, then obviously you need to set this. In my case, I just kept this simple, right? Let's go back here to FreeNAS and just show that. That's my pool path, MNT Gion, and then I created a data set called Plex_data in here to match what Dan is doing. So I don't need to do anything because I already have this created. So now he says run the script by running plexjail.shell, right? So let's do that. Right in here, enter. Had this Plex successfully created. I like to see that. That's awesome. It's grabbing packages. I may cut this out. This is probably going to take a minute and it's going to be somewhat boring. So I'll see you on the flip side. All right, it's actually a day later. This rabbit hole went deep. I could not get this script to work at all. And what turns out was if the jail was named Plex, the script would fail to install packages into it. And if the jail was named anything else, it would work. This makes no sense to me. This is on FreeNAS 11.3U1. We're going to dig into that in the forums. In the meantime, let's do this with a jail named PMS. So we're going to do an IO cache list. I've renamed everything here. We got LMS, that's my music server. PMS transcode, that's my actual real Plex that I use personally. Plex old, that's the one I'm using here for testing purposes. So we're pretending that that was your Plex install, either a plugin or a jail. And now we're going to create a new Plex jail here. If I remember what this thing is called. Plex jail. Okay, plexjail.shell. All right, here we go. And this will take a minute here. I may pause this and come back when it's done. All right, so now this is done. You may see some notes up here about what to do about Intel GPU offload. That's something when I get back to. This will actually work in FreeNAS 11.3 on this particular hardware. I'll do that at the very end of this video. So we have our PMS jail up and running. It doesn't have any media in it, and it doesn't have the metadata from our old Plex installation in it, right? So here's the Plex I'm running for test purposes. It has my actual media and it has metadata it created since yesterday. And I want all of that in my new installation on 11.3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the newly created jail. Okay, that's done. And then we're going to go in here into the jail. and we're gonna connect it to the media. So when you look at these mount points here, Plex data is already connected to the metadata directory that the script set up. So now we're going to create a new mount point, and it's going to go right into media here, and it's going to be my media folder, that one. I'm just going to save that. Okay, I got that going. I'm not going to start the jail now, because if I did, this Plex would start creating its own new metadata from the media once I've assigned folders and such, and I don't want to do that. I actually want to bring the old metadata in. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use these instructions. Use an rsync, sudo rsync HA, which means keep the permissions, and get that from jails, in this case Plex Media Server 1, that's our Plex old, Plex data, Plex Media Server, into wherever we have this now. So what this is going to look like is, in our case, right, sudo rsync, and then this is going to come from mount Gion iocage jails Plex old db nope. Alright, I'm going to just hop into Plex old and take a quick look. iocage. So I did not prepare for this, and I think this is deliberate. I want to see how would you find your data in here, right? Okay, so I need to know where my metadata is at right now. Let's take a quick look. I'm going to use the knowledge base entry from Plex, the support page. Where's the Plex Media Server data directory located? And I see in FreeBSD, this would be a bare metal FreeBSD or a jail I create where I don't change the location. It's in user local Plex data, right? In FreeNAS, and this refers to the plugins, 11.2 or earlier, it would be in var.db Plex data, or FreeNAS 11.3 or newer, you see here it's just on the root directory actually. There's a Plex Media Server directory here right in root, right? So let's take a look at that. I'm going to shut down the PMS, the new jail, and I already shut down my Plex old, which is the plugin I created, and I'm pretending I'm grabbing the data over from the plugin. Well, I'm actually going to do that. Not service, iocage, stop PMS. Okay, it's down. That's great. And now let's see where we would rsync from, right? So in the case of Plex old, I'm going to look at my data store, Mount Gion in this case, and I'm going to look at iocage, and it's a jail, and it's called Plex old, and it's got a root. And I can see, there it is. There's my Plex Media Server. And if I want to just take a peek into that, I'm doing it this way because the this plugin I'm looking at, this looks great, right? The plugin I'm looking at might actually be an old Warden plugin, or it may no longer be functional, or whatever it is. Maybe I can't actually start it to look into it. So I need to have a way of doing this right from FreeNAS shell. Just look into the data store and see where the data are at, right? And then if this was if this was a an 11.2 plugin, would be similar. It would be root, and then instead of Plex Media Server directly, it would be var.db Plex data. In that case, I could actually rsync over the entire var.db Plex data. Now I need to see where this is going. All right, so when I look at my metadata directory, mount Gion Plex underscore data, Plex space media server, you see that some things have been created in here, right? This is not going to be an issue. That should be overwritten by rsync. So I'll just leave that alone for now. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to rsync the contents of my Plex old, which again is right from the root, over into this directory here. I am going to rsync and keep the permissions, so that's HA, I'm going to come from my old jail, mount Eon IOCage, jails, Plex old, root. And in this case, I don't want to copy all of root over, right? Plex space media server, that stuff. And that is going to go into the space I made, the dataset I made for the metadata in the new jail. So mount Geon Plex data. But again, because I can't bring everything over, or rather because I can't bring the subdirectory Plex data over because there isn't one in my old jail or my old plugin, I am going to specify that we're going into Plex Media Server here. Right, just like that. So hit enter. This will take a little while. It can take hours on a production system. I expect in mine it'll be done in less than that. But if you're doing this in production, don't be surprised if this can take 2, 3, maybe 4 hours, depending on the size of your metadata directory. That was pretty quick in my case because I don't really have a lot of metadata in here. Let's go start PMS. And everything I had should come in as it was. So 32400/web. And there we are, right? Coming right in. Plex plugin test is what it's called. And all of my movies are here. All of my settings are here. All my metadata is here. Everything is the way it was. Perfect. That was it. Thank you so much for watching. There's one more thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to go into how to set up hardware transcode, hardware acceleration for Plex server, Plex Media Server, if I so desire, and why I might want to do that and why not, and how to do it. All right, thank you. So that's described here by current 2011. This is for using the Intel iGPU GPU with Plex on FreeBSD FreeNAS 11.3 or later to do hardware transcode. This is interesting if you're doing like 4K movies into mobile. Keep in mind that you can also tell Plex to optimize in the background for mobile, and it'll keep a second file alongside. That's often a better choice. Or you can rip a 1080p and keep that alongside. That might be a better choice. This is really if you like to tinker and you just like the idea of hardware transcode and you have the requisite hardware. So that's important. It's got to be FreeNAS 11.3 or later. It's got to be an Intel CPU with an Intel iGPU because that's the only thing that Plex on FreeBSD supports. Generation 2 through 7, so up to Kaby Lake, but not Coffee Lake. Coffee Lake would require TrueNAS Core 12 to work because the drivers are in FreeBSD 12. All right. If you have a Xeon, read this. Your chiplet and motherboard need to support it. And then we're going to create a script that creates a rule set. And this rule set forwards the dev DRI, which is the graphics device, into the jail. And we'll then restart the DevFS and we'll load the boot modules. All of that has to happen every time it boot because this gets blown away by FreeNAS when it restarts. That's by design. That's how the middleware works, right? So in this particular case, this already exists. You see my Plex rule set script here, and you can see it is executable, right? There's this piece here, make the script executable. And then we need to make sure this runs on every start. So in here under tasks, init shutdown scripts, you can add, and you're going to add a script. And now this shows you the pool, but we're just going to type in where this is actually hiding out from us. And it is in root scripts, plex ruleset sh, plex-ruleset.sh, like that. When this has to be post init enabled with a timeout of 10. Perfect, done, right? And now you would save. Now I've already done this, so you see here, script, root scripts, plex ruleset sh, post init, enabled yes, timeout 10. Great, so this will run on every boot, and it will make sure I have the right rule set and that things are loaded. And I can look at that in FreeBSD itself or in FreeNAS. I'm going to take a look at dev.dri. There it is. So clearly my drivers are loaded and that's working. And I can see this. If this doesn't work, don't go any further. You have to have the iGPU visible in FreeNAS before you can pass it through to a jail. All right, what's the next step? Next step is install the right Intel graphics driver. This depends a little bit on your generation. So if this is up to CPU core generation 3 or 4 or Xeon V2, V3, use this older driver. If it's newer, CPU core generation 5 or Xeon V4, which translates to GPU generation 8, use this newer driver, right? Package install multimedia libvi Intel media driver. So IOKH console PMS. Right, here we are. Now I've already done this, so this should say done, but let's take a quick look. Yep, recent version is already installed. This will install on your side. It'll take a minute, right? And then what we need to do next, we need to add Plex to the video group. Okay, so this is all happening from the console of the jail itself, not from the FreeNAS console. All right, done. I'm gonna come out of here. And now I have to stop the jail and change some jail settings. We're going to do this in the UI. So jails, stop my PMS jail. Edit that. Jail properties. I need to run the right rule set. In my case, I'm using rule set 110. And I need to allow mount dev fs. So these instructions here have rule set 5. I changed mine to be 110 reasons. 5 will work, but with 110 it's a little bit more visible when something goes wrong. FreeNAS has some behavior that's not ideal in 11.3, fixed in 12 around rule sets, where you might have to restart the devfs service. Okay, and we are going to start this. And I'm going to take a quick look inside and see whether dev.dri came in. And if it didn't, then we have some work to do. So we're going to do iokh cage. We can type iokh exec pms ls dev dri. There it is. Okay, great. So now I see the iGPU inside the jail, and the jail has the right drivers installed. So this should now work. Let's take a look. Go back in here. Go to the settings. Plex plugin test is what I call this thing. Gonna go to transcoder. I'm going to say use hardware acceleration when available. This requires you to have a Plex Pass. Not to have the Plex Pass version installed, but to have a Plex Pass. You need to be Plex Pass subscribed to use hardware acceleration. So save changes. And I believe that was it. Testing. Yeah, good. Let's see. Let's go over to testing, right? Let's moment of truth again. Had a couple of those that didn't work exactly as planned. Plex plugin test movies. Okay, let's grab something that's a 4K movie. Blade Runner 2049, that should be one. Get info. Right, lovely. So this is a 4K movie. I'm going to play that. And minimize. And I should now see up here in my activity dashboard, once it gets going, that it uses hardware transcode. Well, this is promising. My CPU is low. That only happens when I'm doing a hardware transcode. Not really seeing this showing up here. Maybe I need to show details. There you go, show details. always good to test this and record it, because then you see what's going on. So I see here I have my 4K video with HW hardware being transcoded to 1080p into my, in this case, my browser. This could be mobile, this could be anything, right? And you can see that my CPU use here is really low. If I tried this on my little Xeon without hardware transcode, it would peg at 100%, it would keep buffering, it just would not be a good time. And that's it. That's how to enable hardware transcode if you have the right hardware for it. All right, thank you.